Retirement is often seen as a destination, but we believe it's an opportunity to pursue your passions, realize your dreams, and live a purposeful life. Great decisions, incredible lives. Retire with Intention podcast is about more than just money. It's about embracing the things that truly matter, the experiences, the relationships, and the impact you leave behind. Here is your host, John Creekmore.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Great Decisions, Incredible Lives. Thank you so much for listening again this week. And I'll tell you what, we are really pumped to introduce you to Adam Nash, a new friend of ours. And he has got just a tremendous vision for impacting the world and making sure alignment between your values and your funds and how you invest in different areas in our greater communities to make impact. And looking forward to a conversation today that is something that's right in the bailiwick of our clients and so many of our listeners, as we really talk about how do we make impact in the world around, how do we manage our resources in effective ways, and how do we bring it all together. And a lot of times what's missing is that actionable tool that you have at your fingertips that allows you to execute on the things that are most important today. And I am so jacked having looked at Daffy and looking at the tools available there. I think you're going to be blessed just with tremendous education, but also an opportunity. And make sure you check out the show notes at the end of the show. There at the bottom, you'll find links straight into Daffy, some other tools and resources to help you as you're walking through a lot of your charitable giving and charitable interactions. And as you all know, it's more than just giving. It's being actively involved in those things that are near and dear to you. Hey, without further ado, Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. Hey, take a minute and introduce yourself to everybody, a little bit of your background and also the formation of Daffy and what it is and how did you think about it?
That's a lot. I'll do my best. Thank you, John. Well, in terms of me, I'm fairly public personality on social media, et cetera. It comes from my historical roles, but my background is mostly in technology and design. My education is kind of a mix of studying computer science and then business later in grad school. But I spent most of my career at companies like Apple, eBay, LinkedIn, Wealthfront, Dropbox, a lot of names that people know. But for me, my passion has always been about taking technology, this rapidly improving tool, and then finding ways to use it to make a lot of the things that we care about in life just better for people, better in their lives, right? And whether those are the actual operating systems and devices people use at a company like Apple, eBay was so material for a long time for millions of people to make a little bit of extra money by selling things on the side. LinkedIn, helping people empower themselves with their two most important assets professionally, who they know and what they know, and using that to help people find success in life. And then, of course, Wealthfront, finding if we could take some of the best practices of what great financial advisors do and put them into software so that more people would have access to them. And so always been very passionate about that idea. I even teach a class at Stanford now called Personal Finance for Engineers for the technology crowd. It's the class I wish existed then. I'm also an active angel investor. I've been very involved with venture capital through my career. And so I've invested in over 140 different companies. But my passion right now, of course, has been building out Daffy with my co-founder. We've been building it. We just celebrated our third birthday, but it's been phenomenal to take all this great technology, all these great insights over the last 10, 15 years about how to build financial applications and applying it to an area that frankly deserves it, but has been, well, it hasn't been focused on by as many of the big players as it could be. And we saw a real opportunity to use that technology to help people give.
Yeah. Hey, walk through at a high level and get as deep as you want to, Adam, as far as on Daffy and what it is and what does it do and kind of connect the dots, if you will.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'll tell you that Daffy stands for the Donor Advised Fund for You. This is what happens, by the way, when you have an engineer naming things, is you get very on the nose kind of naming. But we thought it was a cute name and it was a great app in the App Store. But Daffy, a donor advised fund, is really just a tax advantaged account that's been around for a very long time, decades and decades. The ultra wealthy have known about it for a long time, right? A great financial advisor account may have told you about it. But it turns out most people don't know about it. It's one of these undiscovered things by most people. And I think the industry has some of the blame for that, but it's growing rapidly, right? So there's about 60 million American households who give to charity every year, right? This is something people really do, not just as part of their financial lives. It's the way they want to live, right? Most of us were taught growing up that it's not all meant to be for you.
Mhm.
right? That there are those less fortunate out there, that there are real ways that you can provide benefit to your community and even broadly for the globe. And so, for a lot of people believe that giving is part of living a healthy life. And so, my co-founder and I, we started Daffy during the pandemic with this basic idea and this fundamental insight that giving was more than just a financial task, that it was something that people really cared about. I mean, my children went to a school where every Friday the kids would bring in spare change, put it in a little piggy bank, and then, every quarter vote on which local organization to give the money to, right? And so we teach our children to give, right? And to put money aside for those less fortunate than ourselves. But how many adults actually do that in practice? And so we went out there and said, well, why this disconnect? Why do so many people teach their children, clearly care, not just at a financial level, at a moral, ethical level about giving on a regular basis, and yet don't make time for it? And what we discovered is that most people care, but they're very busy. Professional lives, social lives, family. There's a lot going on, and giving just doesn't seem to be the thing that grabs your attention. It's not urgent any given day or week. And so a lot of people are left feeling like at the end of the year that, oh, they didn't give what they wanted to give. There was some organization that they care about that they forgot to write a check to, et cetera. And so Alejandro and I kind of put our heads together. Alejandro's had a great career as well, working at some of the top technology names, And we said, how can we build an app that captures the amazing financial benefits of a donor advised fund, the amazing tax benefits, but also builds a platform and a system where people can have one place to do all their giving. Never worry about a tax receipt, never asking the question, what did I give last year? Who did I give it to?
Mhm.
And maybe we could build a product that actually inspired people to give more. And that's
Mhm.
really how Daffy was born.
Yeah. Hey, take a second, if you would, back up a little bit.
Mhm.
Explain what a donor advised fund is and how people can actually use a donor advised fund. Sometimes we throw that word around. Maybe some of the listeners may not be aware what a donor advised fund is. Can you explain that for some folks?
Oh, I'm sure quite a few people haven't heard of it. Like I said, it's been a product. It's been around for a very long time. Like I said, it goes back almost 100 years. But fundamentally, but most people, like I said, if you haven't had your advisor or accountant tell you about it, you probably haven't heard about it before.
Mhm.
And so a donor advised fund, the easiest way to think about a donor advised fund is it's a tax advantaged account. It's not unlike an IRA is for retirement or a 401k or a 529 plan is for college savings.
Mhm.
But a donor advised fund is designed specifically for giving to charity, and it captures this wonderful benefit. So donor advised funds, when you put money into a donor advised fund, you get an immediate tax deduction for making a charitable donation, right?
Okay.
That money is then invested tax free. I mean, Daffy itself offers a whole range of portfolios that the money can be invested in, depending on what your priors are. And then, of course, when you want to actually send that money to an operating charity, just tap, tap, tap on your phone, and the donor advised fund sends that money to the charity in question. And so it's a wonderful product because for a lot of people, the tax benefit does matter, right? It's not the reason we give, but people really do. They don't want to not take advantage of the fact that you get this deduction, right? You have bills to pay, et cetera. But it's hard to give because you have to combine these two problems. How much can I afford to give? Budgeting is a very hard problem for people. And then who do I give the money to? And the beauty of the donor advised fund is it separates those two hard problems. So you can make the first decision, how much can I afford to give to charity? How much do I want to give? In fact, at Daffy, one of the first things we ask our members, what's your goal for giving for the year? I mean, it could be as simple as looking at what you gave last year, right?
Yeah.
Or some people look at a percentage of their salary, some people look at their net worth, but you set a goal for giving. Daffy makes it very, very easy for people to automatically put that money in from a bank account. By the way, if you want extra tax benefits, you can always fund an account by donating stock, appreciated stock, or mutual funds or ETFs. We even take crypto. But fundamentally, we separate that step. The donor advised fund lets you put money aside for charity, know that it's invested tax free, and then you can focus on the problem that is really rewarding for a lot of people, which is who do I give the money to? Which causes, which organizations? And when you do that research, the donor advised fund makes it very easy to support those organizations on an ongoing basis, right? You can do a one-time donation, you can do a recurring donation, but you can really decide that you want intentionally to support a charity and know that you have the means to do so because the money is already there, put aside.
Yeah. So a donor advised fund, it is a 501c3, right? And so when the money goes in, whenever you guys walk through the question, you really counsel people as far as asking good questions to them to identify what their giving strategy is going to be, the dollar amount, and even the method as far as giving. Is it cash? Is it a deposit from a bank? Is it depreciated asset? Is it stock or crypto? And so you walk through all that. Once they have the dollars go into Daffy or the donor advised fund, at that point, they'll receive a credit as far as able to itemize on their taxes and save money in the year which they make that donation over. And then once the dollars get into the fund, though, it doesn't automatically have to go to a charity at some point you would choose to. However, it sits there, it's invested in a certain model portfolio, and it's allowed to grow tax-free. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. And like I said, I think most donor advised funds exist because separating those two problems of putting the money aside for charity and then figuring out where that money should go deserve their own attention, right? And actually engage different parts of our lives and brains. I mean, some of the big benefits of having a donor advised fund is just knowing that when you are inspired to give, when something happens, maybe it's for a friend who volunteers at another organization or is on the board. Maybe it's something happens in the world, right? Last year you have those terrible fires in Maui and you want to support organizations on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's so meaningful to be able to give when you're inspired to give.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best things about having a donor advised fund is that there's an account for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, people treat it different ways. Some people do. Some people put in money regularly and give the money almost as fast as they put it in. We see a lot of people like that. A lot of people support a religious institution, a church, a synagogue. They support their kids' school, maybe their alma mater, a national cause. So some people like to fund that on an ongoing basis. Some people, a lot of people in the US have a variable income, right? We have good years and not so good years. And the idea of putting money aside for charity in the good years, by the way, when your tax rates are higher, so the benefit is better, put that money in the good years so that in the not so good years, you actually have the money to continue to support the charities you care about is also a real meaningful benefit for people. And it makes a lot of sense. So we see some people put money aside where they're funding multiple years of their giving because they don't want to put that at risk. It's too important to them. They don't want their giving to have to vary with their income and the economy the way it goes. And then there's even a third group of people where they have some great, have a windfall. Something comes into their life. The small business owner, you have a very good year. Maybe you sell your business. Maybe you work in technology and you own stock. Maybe you just had a good investment in the stock market. And so in those years where you have that windfall, once again, taxes tend to be an issue. The charitable deduction is one of the best deductions out there. But unfortunately, it turns out, if you're dealing with a lot of money, very few of us want to make a snap decision about who to give that much money to, right? And so the donor advised fund lets you put that money aside and fund multiple years, even decades of giving. And so we see that pattern as well.
We talk about these charities and the ones that are out there, 501c3s, that there's so many available. You mentioned churches, you mentioned potential relief efforts for things that are happening. Right now, we have a huge issue over in the eastern part of the U.S. as far as the hurricane they hit, right? And so that we see the real need, and sometimes it tugs at the heartstrings for an immediate give into that. But when I think about the number of charities, I don't know how many there is in the country people can donate to, it's got to be, it seems like millions of different charities out there. As far as at Daffy, are you guys limited to a certain number of charities people can give to, or is it pretty much anyone 501c3 people can interact with on your platform?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And by the way, the exact number of charities, you can't even get that number from the IRS because some religious organizations don't have to register in all cases with the IRS. But the estimates are that there's somewhere between, I've seen estimates from 1.7 all the way up to 2 million organizations in the US alone. And you're right, there's a lot of organizations out there. There's a lot of people want to know in terms of what organizations they support. And we do a lot at Daffy to try and help people make sense of that information and help people. But I like to come back to the basics, which is that it turns out it's incredibly validating and meaningful to people to be able to give when they're inspired to give, when they want to give. And I think the Donor Advised Fund just empowers people to do that, right? It's the power of putting money aside, right? You don't have to reach into your wallet and guess, wait, do I need this money for something else? You've already made the decision. that that's for charity, you can
Mhm.
just focus on that decision of who to give it to. But yeah, so, a lot of people give locally to organizations that they know something about. That's always, in fact, during the pandemic when Daffy was founded, that was a big impetus. People saw the need in their communities, areas. You mentioned national causes or, crises where you really feel for the people and you realize that you can't personally help them, but you know that there are people on the ground funded by organizations that are helping people, and you want to do your part to help them. But the donor advised fund enables this. And so different donor advised funds have different policies about who they support. There are some that are issue based, there are some that are geography limited. Daffy, of course, turns out to be a very broad based donor advised fund. Our policy is if it is a legal charity in the US, if we can, from a regulatory standpoint, send money to them, we support that. And so we really do, we take the effort away from our members in that if you see a charity on Daffy, you can assume that their paperwork is up to date with the IRS. They are a legal charity to donate to that qualifies for the tax deduction, that their organization is in good standing with third-party checks, et cetera. We have all that built in. But that's because we designed Daffy really around a very simple mission, which is around generosity and giving. I mean, our mission statement is to help people be more generous more often. And
Yeah.
that's what we've kind of optimized our platform for, making it easy to put money or assets aside for charity and making it very easy to give.
We talked about making things very easy to give. It's interesting with the cybersecurity risk and threats nowadays, people unknowingly give to bad players within the technology space, right? And so when you kind of think about this, we have people having a heart's desire to give charitably to help out those where there's a huge need. They're giving appreciated assets. They're donating money as far as from their transition from their checking accounts over to Daffy account as far as donor advised fund, or also putting crypto or some type of digital assets over. Fear some people have then is on the platform. What does the security look like? So I don't unknowingly give money away to some organizations that are up to no good.
Right. And I think security is a hot topic in technology in general. And it's a difficult one for most people because the old arbiters of how you can trust or not trust. I mean, some of the biggest security problems have happened from the largest and oldest organizations, because it turns out just because a company or an organization has been around for 100 years doesn't mean they're experts at cybersecurity or
Right.
the recent best practices. I mean, one of the advantages of building a new platform is that you can leverage the latest technology and platforms that are available that can help you with those security issues, right? Daffy doesn't have to reinvent how to take credit cards or debit cards or detect fraud, et cetera, because we use services like Stripe and even modern companies like Sardine, which, sounds like a funny name, but actually are experts from these big businesses, where they have worked on the technology to detect fraud all over the world and cybersecurity incidents. And so even as a small organization using modern technology, we can take advantage of those best practices and those platforms. But I will tell you that one of the reasons people like donor advised funds is it gives you a lot of control over the information that you share with charities, right? If you make a donation on Daffy, you have a choice. You can make it anonymous. You can give them your fund name. You can give them an email address. You can give them a phone number and address if you'd like. However much information you want to share with the charity is up to you.
Hmm.
But having the donor advised fund gives you the ability to control how your information flows, because different people have different opinions about that. And by the way, depending on the organizations you support, maybe it's one you know well, maybe it's one you don't know well, maybe that opinion changes. And so having a donor advised fund, giving yourself some control, so you're not just, mailing a check that has your address on it and maybe your phone number and other things to an organization you don't know. To us, those fears that people have, well founded in some cases, are another reason that keep people from giving. And
Hmm.
like I said, our entire platform is designed around helping people give, to help people be more generous. And if having a donor advised fund that actually is doing those checks, looking up the data from the IRS or from your local state on how the charity is set up, if it means verifying that charity passes all these third-party tests, and if that gives people more security and a feeling of security that lets them give more freely, from us, that's a win. That's a win for everyone involved.
Huge win. And I was just sitting here thinking, Adam, that you've really built a beautiful platform for all the right reasons. It checks so many boxes for so many people. And we've talked about a desire as far as to participate, a desire to give charitably. You have the dual mandate really of how much to give, in which you help people walk through that to a certain extent, but also then the why of why to give and where to give. And so people all of a sudden, I'm sitting there thinking, probably have an interest as far as in giving, interacting with Daffy. And I just briefly after that last question, I downloaded the app on my phone. I downloaded my portable device sitting right here. I pulled it up on my desktop. Kind of walk through a little bit the user experience. I mean, all three tools that people use all the time, except for my watch, I've not pulled it up on there, but I pulled it up on three different devices in a really short minute, maybe a minute. Walk through the user experience and what people can expect interacting as far as with Daffy.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up. It's an area that's very important to myself and my co-founder. You probably could guess since I started my career at Apple that I care a bit about design user experience. And we were very proud. I mean, one of the things we did is we actually have a fully functional native app in the App Store. Getting started with Daffy can just mean going to the Apple App Store and typing Daffy, getting the app on your phone. If you prefer a desktop experience or using the web, daffy.org, fully functional. But we try to make it very easy to get started. We don't have the large minimums up front that some donor advised funds have. You know, Vanguard, who I love, has a $25,000 minimum to open an account there. We make it as easy as saying, do you want to put aside $10 a week, $25 a month? Do you want to make a one-time deposit? Do you want to send stock? We literally give you as many options as possible. But if you download the app and go through the experience, as it sounds like you have, you'll know that the user experience, we try to walk people through the basic steps of setting up an account for giving. You know, of course, we ask your name and where you're located. We actually use geography, right, to know what charities are near you, et cetera. Once you set up your account, we ask you that important question. What is your goal, right? If Apple Health can track how many steps you're taking, if, you know, Robinhood can give you confetti when you buy stock or crypto, you know, we can celebrate for people when they're getting closer to and help them hit their goals for giving for the year. Then we make it easy to link your bank account. You can use a credit or debit card. Apple Pay works. You can send stock, ETFs, mutual funds, crypto. We literally have thought of almost every way that a person might want to put money aside for charity. And we try to make that accessible from the app. Once you fund the account, you pick a portfolio. We have 15 pre-built portfolios. You can just pick one. If you want a low-cost index fund portfolio from Vanguard, we have it. You want your money invested in a money market fund or in a bond portfolio, we have that too. If you even want to experiment, you want to grow your money for charity and you're excited about crypto, we even support that. But you pick a portfolio. We even have a feature on our platform now. If you want to build your own portfolio, we've greenlit 460 of the low-cost ETFs from the best providers in the industry. And you can even, with your advisor, design your own portfolio. Once you set the account up, that's it. Right. And you can go down the journey. And we have a lot of features that are a lot of fun for people to help with giving. Daffy Gifts lets you actually send a link to someone where they pick the charity. You can send them $100 and say, give it to the charity of your choice. And then they pick the charity and then you approve it. We have a family plan. You can add your children. You can add your siblings. You can add your parents, up to 24 people on your fund. You still control the fund, but they can make their own recommendations about who to give to and see the donations you're making. Wonderful. I'll tell you, as a father of four, especially some teenagers, it turns out when they get alerts on their devices about charities that you give to, that you support, that's a meaningful way to start a conversation. I can't tell you how many dinner time conversations we've had where our children discovered which charities we support and they asked why. And then had their own suggestions. It's really wonderful. We even have this new feature called campaigns, where if you want to support your local school or maybe do something in memoriam for someone who's maybe passed on their anniversary, et cetera, you can pick up to 6 charities and use your donor advised fund to match the donations of everyone else. It's just another way to give and inspire other ways to give. Or by the way, when you look on Daffy, you might find campaigns from other people in your area that you want to support. And so we try to make it very easy to get started. And the reason we try to make it easy to get started is one thing that we deeply believe is that giving begets more giving. That actually it turns out when people feel what it feels like to be able to give when they want to give, to have the money to support the organizations they care about, most people like it. And if you make it easy enough, they'll do more of it. And so we really try, this is part of our goal with the entire platform, is just provide people with a better system for this important part of their lives, which is giving.
Yeah. I love that platform. That makes so much sense to me. And folks, if you have not downloaded the app yet, I encourage you to do that right now. Hop over to daffy.org if you're on your desktop. I mean, even if you pop down to products in the middle as far as the drop down, Adam's mentioned Daffy campaigns, Daffy for work, Daffy for families. I mean, Daffy gifts. There's so many different ways to utilize the tool. Absolutely phenomenal. I'd encourage you to get to your app store or at least go to the website if you're on the desktop and check out Daffy as far as right there. I'm just blown away with the tool and how easy it is to use, the way it's brought together. And I know that you really seek feedback from users and going through different ways of enhancing and improving the overall experience and also the actual impact that you're seeing from your creation here. When you kind of think about the feedback that's been given, what would you say has been the most surprising feedback or insight that you've received from different users since launching Daffy?
Well, I would say like you have to have some humility, I think, when you build technology products, because you have all these ideas of what people want to do with it. You do your research, you talk to people, you have great designers, you work on these problems, and then you release it. And sometimes you're right, and then you're always sometimes surprised by what people do with it. When we launched the product, it was really inspiring. I mean, the thing that was fantastic in the feedback is just hearing from members about how much they love just having the ability to do this and making it easy. Some people actually love our pricing. I know it sounds funny, but it turns out a lot of the donor advised funds actually charge quite a bit. I mean, like I said, even firms like Vanguard, Schwab, Fidelity will charge you 60 basis points, 0.6% of your account every year. We're free under $100 if you want to get started. And for most of our members, it's $3 a month. And so some people like the pricing. The thing that surprised me the most in the beginning was actually the fact that some people who had donor advised funds wanted to move money to us. It was actually a feature we didn't have when we launched.
Yeah.
We were actually surprised. And the reason we were surprised is we thought that most of the people who had donor advised funds were locked in, they were wealthy enough, they wouldn't want to try a new app and service. And we found that actually a lot of them wanted to move over a little bit of money just so they could walk around and give more easily. And then once they tried Daffy, they liked it and asked, wait, why am I paying so much for this other thing I'm not using, and then moving it over. But, I mean, there's a lot of small things and inspirations. We didn't have originally the ability to search for charities near you. But it turned out, with an iPhone app, et cetera, that ability to find the food bank that's closest to you and then see the research on it was really useful for people. And I remember my co-founder quickly working on that feature to get it out the door a few weeks after we launched. It was still after the pandemic. A lot of people were thinking that way. And so a lot of inspiration and improvement comes from our members. I mean, we just did a redesign, though, of the entire experience. I mean, I know the big companies sometimes take a decade to redesign their products. We move a little bit more quickly. But some of the feature requests we had from our members were actually very simple, right? I'll give you an example. I had no idea how big a deal it was for people to have their donation tax receipts in one place. I will just admit, I got very excited about the investment portfolios, the ability to take Apple Pay, all these technology features. Right. But it turns out for most people, they have incredible anxiety at tax time about finding their receipts.
Yeah.
And this simple feature we built where when you make a donation, you don't have to wait till February 15th or December 31st to get a list of your receipts. We always, in real time, have all of your donation receipts in one place for people. And I was shocked at how much peace of mind that gave people. It actually made people only want to do their donations from Daffy.
Wow.
Because they had this kind of peace of mind that, whether I donated cash, whether I gave stock, etc., my tax receipt is there. I'm not going to panic when my accountant asks for it, or if I'm doing my taxes myself, have to dig it up. It'll be easy and accessible for me. So, it just depends.
Yeah, huge insight. I mean, that's incredible. It's been fun to watch the journey you've been on the last 3 years. I know, Adam, you have got a mind to think about the future. How do you see Daffy? What's next? What do you envision happening next with Daffy, and how do you see it adjusting and changing in the future?
Well, I think there's the kind of short term and the long term. I mean, in the short term, we're very excited to be pushing this entire sector towards giving people more ways to give and being inspired more often to give. And so Daffy campaigns is a great example of that, right? It seems so obvious in retrospect. I mean, internet campaigns have been around and it's not like charities haven't been doing matching campaigns for decades, but the idea of doing that over a donor advised fund sounds so simple. But we love bringing that innovation. Even the family plan. I mean, what technology service doesn't have a family plan? I mean, once again, I'm a parent. How many Amazon requests do I get, or iTunes, or Xbox, or whatever's going on? Everyone has a family plan. Netflix has a family plan. Somehow no donor advised fund did. And so we added it. So bringing all these innovations from the technology world into the world of donor advised funds and giving is definitely something that you're going to see a lot from us this year, next year, the following year. There are so many ideas. We've had so many people from other donor advised funds, people who have worked in this industry for decades, who come to us and say, I've been talking about doing that for over 15 years. I could never get them to fund the feature to get it built.
Yeah.
And so we love just showing people that it's possible. And I hope you'll see those features go throughout the entire industry. In the long term, we definitely see ourselves that way, as an instigator of sorts, of provoking the industry to actually invest in technology and help people give. But we do have a bigger idea, and I wrote about it when we raised money originally. And it's back to the idea that you brought up earlier in this conversation, which is that there really are more than 1 million charities, almost 2 million charities in the US. And there's tens of millions of people who care about giving. But those tens of millions of people have trouble figuring out which organizations they want to support, and even that they exist. And those organizations have incredible trouble finding people. And so even though we're starting with donations, we're starting with fundraising, the truth is charities need people for all sorts of reasons. They need volunteers, they need board members, they throw events, right? They need all this support from their communities. And so building Daffy as it grows into more of a platform where people discover charities and charities can find people, and people can end up discovering more purpose through their giving, is something I think uniquely we could do as we grow. But that's very long term. Right now, we have our hands full just making amazing features and doing it, frankly, at a low cost with a great experience.
Yeah, I'll kind of say this in closing. Not only cool technology, great design, great look, but more important than that to me is the actual impact in the lives of people. The ability to teach and train multi-general giving and reaching into our communities by grandparents and parents using a tool like this to teach that next generation on core values in their families is just phenomenal. Adam, thank you so much for time today. Greatly appreciate your introduction. Thanks for being with us. And also for all the listeners, thanks for listening in. I want to encourage you, definitely hop out to the App Store and download the app. Get interactive as far as with Daffy, and make sure that you are continuing to align your core values with the daily decisions you do every day, not just for now, but for generations to come. Thank you all. Talk to you guys next week.
Thank you again for listening to the Great Decisions, Incredible Lives, Retire with Intention podcast with host John Kriegmer. Follow us on social media, visit our website, and join our community of like-minded individuals redefining retirement and living incredible lives. Please leave us a review and share our podcast with others who may benefit. We wish you a future filled with purpose, fulfillment, and the joy of living your incredible life in retirement.